Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. We are Watches and Style, live from Los Angeles and wherever Aussie happens to be.
Yeah, this
And,
is Las
and
Vegas.
yeah, wishes to disclose. I mean, I know where he is, but we're going to start by talking about the AP Audemars Piguet CEO transition situation and then branch out to some other industry related issues, whether it is new releases or maybe other kinds of loose ends that we are going to tie from the past couple of weeks, because I'm sure Ozzy would also be interested in talking about that photo which was captured at US Open with the Rolex CEO on the right and Donald Trump on the left, and what that might even mean for the industry, right? We can talk also about that if we have time and if we have the right energy. Ozzy, how are you doing?
Doing really well. Doing very well. Got the panda out today. I haven't worn this that much this year actually. Um, any special occasion has usually come with wearing the gold Daytona. Um,
That's
and
true.
and
Now you
and
guys have two, and you can kind of do the matching thing, right?
yeah,
Twinning.
yeah, we did. We went clubbing for the first time in Vegas together, and the other couple they had a pair of Rolex day dates. We had the pair of gold Daytonas.
That's
It
a
was fun.
respectable double date, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Heavy hitters on the dance floor.
Well, I can't dance for shit, so it doesn't matter what I wear. I won't. If I have a shred of coolness about me, I lose that the minute I enter a nightclub or any similar situation. Ryan, nice to see you, man. Good to see all these people in the chat. Um, so let's just go right into this issue, because this conversation, these rumors kind of started rocking the industry at its core quite quickly once they were released by Astrid Wendland, who has this fantastic publication, by the way, about fashion and luxury. And she was present, called Miss Tweed. I don't want to miss that. So Miss Tweed is the name of the publication. Astrid Wendland is the journalist. She was present at the Geneva Watch Days, which, even if it is not as big as the Watches and Wonders event, it is still at this time of the year the place to be when it comes to um, horological epicenter, specifically, of course, Swiss watches. And because it is designed in this decentralized way in the city of Geneva, it's not only a great place to check out and discover some of the independent makers that you may not have had the pleasure to know and get a hands-on experience. It's also, it thrusts you into the midst of the industry and these kinds of news. And she broke the news a little more than a day ago that the Audemars Piguet CEO Ilaria Resta, who hasn't yet been in the job for a full 2 years, was about to make an exit. Here's how she sums up: independent watchmaker Audemars Piguet is to part ways with CEO Ilaria Resta after 2 years, industry sources said at Geneva Watch Days annual fair. Family-controlled Audemars Piguet, which celebrates its 150th anniversary this year, and please take note of all these phrases and occasions, because I think they will become important later when we try to explain this event, which celebrates its 150th anniversary this year, is the world's fourth biggest luxury watch brand after Rolex, Cartier, and Omega. It generates more than 2 billion in annual sales, analysts estimate. What did you make of this, Oz, when you first heard about it?
Um, to me, it sort of made some sense because I haven't done the Morgan Stanley report, but I have no doubt that AP's volume and numbers are not looking good.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying like they're circling the drain, but it's not good for a new CEO to oversee, say,
Mhm.
5%, 10% decline in revenue, whatever it happens to be. Of course, we don't really know what the
Right.
profitability of this business is, and it does look like she's been a layabout because there's really not been any real activity. I think some of the collabs have slowed down.
Right.
Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, they were always going to be a niche part of the business, if anything. So really, there's been no visible changes at all under her, and potentially you would say, if you were an owner of this business, you would feel like maybe you're in panic mode, and with no changes or innovation, you would say maybe she's not the best person to drive forward because the first 2 years have been like nothing.
Yeah,
She would have gotten a blank check. She could go into I'm going to kill the code. She would have been allowed to do it.
I think so. Look, a few things that I want to say tickle my talk. I'm not just delaying to answer what you're saying, but we'll get to that, and we'll get to it with a specific interpretation as well. Of course, they said she's staying, um, but you don't always mean what you say, especially in the business world. But we will have a specific explanation of that. I will at least offer a certain interpretation now. I have to say, she actually came in at a very difficult time for someone new and someone new to the industry, because her immediate predecessor, Francois Henri Benamias, one, he was a veteran in the company for, I think, a little more than 2 decades of work, some of which preceded his actual term as CEO, but he was at some point the CEO of North America. Um, and after they deposed in a similar fashion, by the way, maybe a little more scandalously and abruptly, Philippe Merck, who was occupying the position for 4 years, um, Benamias ended up serving as the CEO for 11 years. And from AP has seen significant growth, not only in terms of the revenue generated, which has really reached a fever pitch in the post-pandemic era, but also they have had this steady expansion in terms of cultural awareness, in terms of mainstream recognition of the brand. And that was very much, again, I don't personally like the guy at all. It's not my style of leadership. It's not my style of leadership in any area, but certainly not in watchmaking. But Benamias's brand has been, and you mentioned collaborations, that was his brand. And it was not simply a way of driving innovation and introducing new things into the Audemars Piguet catalog. It was a very concerted and conscious effort of relating to the right personalities who were on the verge of gaining resonance in mainstream culture, and using their names to broadcast Audemars Piguet as a brand to the widest possible audience. And that, for really a very niche horological brand, opened entire new horizons. And we can always think of the entire industry being in the right place and the right time when the COVID crisis hit, and the luxury industry, seemingly paradoxically at the beginning, but then in quite explainable ways, benefited from it. Uh, AP wouldn't have benefited from it in the same way if it weren't for the kind of work that Benamias and his mentality, his approach didn't prepare AP in this way, going all the way back to early 2000s, and his way of bringing people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Muhammad Ali, Jay-Z on board, and building from there with all sorts of collaborations that range from Shaquille O'Neal to Leo Messi and so many others. Most recently, Travis Scott. I don't want to trigger your Oz, so stay with me, please. But that was it. So that was a very tough act to follow, especially for an industry outsider. Ilaria Resta, who is a Swiss Italian national, had most of her work in fragrance and beauty. Again, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. This was exactly the headline that New York Times gave her. And I think that made her both a very interesting choice, but she wasn't an obvious choice, right? With zero previous track record in horology. And I will argue she was coming from a field that's almost diametrically opposite to the world of watches, right? I tried to explain that in a very quick summary on Instagram to someone, because I said somehow I'm not surprised, but I was trying to say there, Ilaria Resta arrived from the fragrance industry with no previous experience in horology, and I can't think of another luxury product segment that is so diametrically opposed to the concept and main appeal of a mechanical watch. One, the fragrance is the definition of ephemeral. The other aspires to be timeless, right? It at least aims to transcend generations. So she had her work cut out for her from the very, very beginning.
I struggled to understand how the board would arrive at this person. Like, what are they getting that someone else wasn't gonna bring to them is the question.
I think it was Oz. I thought about it in two ways, because again, I'm not saying something incredibly original and something that the Audemars Piguet Foundation didn't think about when they were making this hire. I think they thought it in the opposite way. They thought it positively, saying, hey, if she can sell something as ephemeral, as effervescent as fragrance, she would kill it with our product, which actually is the definition of aspiring to timelessness. You would say in hyperbolic terms immortality, but the idea is we are making a mechanical watch that can outlast generations, that can go beyond the lifespan of a single human being. So they probably thought, with her experience, with her outsider perspective, she can actually make a killing here, as opposed to someone who would help them fall back into familiar ways. So yeah, that was my understanding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like Steve Jobs bringing in Scully for Apple. Former Pepsi CEO goes to Apple.
That's it.
To successfully oversee the destruction of the brand.
That's it. And again, that's what I had in the back of my mind when I talked about the hyperbole of trying to achieve immortality, because this was Steve Jobs' vision, right? He literally said when he was recruiting Scully, do you want to sell sugared water for the rest of your life, or do you want to change the world? Right? I think AP was much more humble about their intentions. They were just trying to have her oversee gradual expansions in a period that followed immense growth and perhaps the purplest of all purple patches in the industry in terms of sales and revenue.
Right. I mean, I think it's okay to go for a complete outsider, but evidently she's doing like really nothing with it. Like I would expect just pluck anyone from Panerai or Swatch Group, and they probably would have had maybe a slightly more inspired 2 years than what we've seen so far under Resta, which is surprising because I'm sure the board would have preferred to see more something different, something new. You know, they've played the Joker card, so it's time for something interesting to happen.
That's it. I love this reference, but again, I'm playing the devil's advocate here. A product cycle in the world of watches is at least 3 years, right? So a lot of what she has executed so far were literally projects inherited from Benamias, from the previous regime. And two specific examples for that, just to think very quickly. The new ceramic alloy, right? Bleu Nuit Nuage 50, the original Royal Oak dial color executed in a signature shade of ceramic, right? That was Benamias's project. And in fact, the initial blue that they came up with was apparently an accident that they encountered on the way of trying to reach that specific color. Or the new perpetual calendar movement that they have introduced earlier this year. That was basically the base movement, the base caliber, the foundation of that ultra complicated Code 1159 Universel they introduced at the end of 2023, just as Benamias was going out. So that movement that doesn't need any pin pushers for adjustment and corrections, and where everything can be adjusted backwards and forwards discreetly from different crown positions in terms of setting the perpetual calendar. All of that was a ready-made invention. Now, people who were trying to defend her blamed Benamias for, in fact, rushing out that initial release rather than leaving it for her to be able to own and use as a platform for her own entrance. And if you have seen Benamias accept the Grand Prix in that 2023 ceremony for that watch, you will see how much he desired that sort of send-off rather than being extremely generous to simply let an incoming CEO inherit that. I'm not blaming him. I think he did the right thing for himself, but that didn't necessarily prepare the ground for Ilaria Resta to take over and start on a high note. Instead, she started, in the wake of all that expectation. Okay, what is AP going to do next? Oh, nothing at all. They're just going to continue to repeat and take aspects of what has been achieved before. But again, in her defense, it's only been 2 years, but I think she also has a certain awareness of what she can and cannot accomplish in the coming years. Because as you might know, this rumor actually started initially because earlier this year, Ilaria Resta was appointed as a non-executive director to the board of directors for Prada, which is a group, by the way. So it's not just Prada, but, pardon me, Miu Miu, which incidentally just introduced this season their first fragrance, Mutine, So that's I don't think that's a coincidence, really. Um, they have other brands too. Car Shoe. What else was there? Marchesi, churches. So anything from shoes to high fashion to fragrance as well, and even patisserie, right? So even pastry shops, eyewear, so on and so forth, through licensing agreements. Um, so that's how the rumors started, and you know this better than I do, certainly, because I've never really been in that sort of environment. But what is the best way to look for a new job, Oz? You can tell me this from personal experience.
Yeah, networking, like getting in touch with the people who
Even more
are.
simple, like I'm just talking about the tourism, right? The best way or the best time to look for a job is when you already have a job. So
Mhm.
she wasn't going to
Oh,
wait. She wasn't going to wait until she was
out.
actually let go or that she resigned to look for a
Mhm.
job. But you're right. Yeah. Being in a board of directors, even in a non-executive position, is basically the groundwork of her to launch into a different
Mhm.
position. Um, and
But I
that's
mean,
the,
how would you characterize the last 2 years? I mean, we can talk about what the aspirations were from the board, but what do you think she's done and overseen? Too early? You say 3 year product cycle is too early to really tell?
I think I spent my ammo on that, playing the devil's advocate when I said, one, it's not even a full product cycle. Two, that she actually had, well, she was placed under so many high expectations, maybe maybe by the board itself, by the foundation, but also by the industry, which is like, it's a very difficult time. When Dufour gets interviewed about it, even the Rolex CEO, which is not necessarily a company that is hurting, um, they talk about the post-pandemic moment as already part of a bygone past that's
Mhm.
never gonna come back. Everyone is hurting, right? The sales have declined significantly, and like you said, maybe 5 to 10% in terms of um, specific number of units moved.
Mhm.
Uh, there are a few points in the chat that I want to pick up from. When Tickle My Talk says AP only have one AD in Australia now, right? We have praised and all these reports that you also alluded to, Ozzy, like the Morgan Stanley, like Deloitte, like basically any report, any consulting report that was produced on the industry always praised AP for their ability to push for this direct to consumer model where they privilege their own boutiques and even the kinds of exclusive luxury retail experiences that they started offering through their AP houses, right, which exist in more than 20 locations now, almost 2 dozen locations worldwide. So, right, on the one hand, they thought they didn't need ADs anymore. Um, but maybe, some of their older relationships in a tougher time for sales could have come in handy in washing their hands off of certain kinds of models that are proving difficult to shift. Um, and I'm reminded here of what uh, Tiffany and Co experienced in uh, bundling deals gone awry around the release of the Tiffany dial
Mm.
Patek Nautilus,
Yeah.
right? Where they had a number of privileged customers who
It was
literally invested
guaranteed.
invested millions.
Yeah.
Millions. We are not talking about, I cry enough about this idea of my clients and my people I consult suffering from having to buy 2-3 watches at retail to get to the fourth watch. But people literally had to spend like 10 million, up to 10 million. Supposedly they were guaranteed this watch, and a lot of them, of course, couldn't get it because it was only made in 170 examples. And those who got it, when they saw examples of it turn on the secondary market and right away on public auctions, they realized, like, we spent 10 million and these pieces are now selling for 1.5, 2 million at best. Right? The first example supposedly sold for so much money.
6.
Then the first buyer backed out anyways, right? And the second person picked up. Pardon me, but so
I mean, just to dwell on the moment. To me, that was the biggest jump the shark for the whole industry. Definitely for Patek itself. After them announcing discontinuation 5711, we're not going to be the hype company. It's not just about 5711. Oh, Tiffany 5711. It's like, you fuckers.
Then the green dial 5711. Yeah. But what I wanted to say, I know I'm always so long-winded, so I'm sorry, guys. At least give me a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up, so we can at least rest easy on that front. I know there are a lot of people watching for this small channel, so I don't take it for granted. But the reason I brought that up is because when you have this sort of exclusive model, when you're dealing directly with the customer, everything you do, you have to take accountability. You can, of course, choose always not to take accountability, but that will end up, you'll still end up with a disgruntled customer who blames you, usually rightly, for how you shortchange them. When you have authorized dealers, like Rolex, that's why their business model is so great, actually, because the advertising budget is taken care of by ADs. The ADs have to pay millions to prepare their boutiques to Rolex's specifications, and at the end of the day, Rolex itself and fanboys of Rolex like me can say, oh, if your AD actually shortchanged you, Rolex is not responsible for it. It's just like, some stupid AD and their own policy. AP can't do that anymore because they don't have many ADs left, right? They face the customer directly. So everything they do, when people are sold so many Code 1159s without necessarily getting to the piece that they actually desire, AP gets direct blame for that. When people get exactly what they wanted and now want to turn over and move on from the pieces that they have collected and no longer want, that they have collected in the way and no longer want, they blame AP for the products selling for much less than retail pricing on the secondary market, right? They have to take the direct blame now.
I wonder, like, but within the Discord we talk about AP being a very transactional company,
right?
As in, you buy a code, you get your steel 41mm RO next, and they supply it. They don't swindle their customers like we're suggesting, like in the case of Patek and stuff like that.
Right.
AP are very transactional. They'll tell you what to buy, you buy it, you get what you want next. They'll deliver. The essays are very clear on exactly what you need to do to get exactly what you want, and they actually deliver.
I agree. They don't overpromise and underdeliver as much as perhaps other brands and authorized dealers and representatives of other brands. But that being said, customers still get sour about the process, maybe because they end up waiting too long, or when they figure out that, oh, they can't move on from a certain piece for at least 2 years, or like, when they want to move on from the piece that they bought for 60,000 is around 40 to 45,000 on the secondary market. So people can still find ways, and I think, from my perspective, rightly so, for feeling sour, feeling shortchanged, and being disgruntled about the whole experience. Robert Wood, nice to see you, man. Thank you so much. Look at that,
Wow,
member for
25 months.
25 months for more than two.
It's
I
amazing.
I don't even realize that I had memberships
That's
for
amazing.
more than two years.
Thank you,
That's
Robert.
amazing. Thank you.
So, I think of it more from the SA's perspective. It's clear that they have more supply than they have demand in aggregate, and their job is just to find some warm bodies to take some of these watches home. And what is actually a little bit stunning is, like, why are some of the watches like so overpriced? Like they're not even doing their homework. I mean, they're making it so hard on their essays. And look, maybe it's so that there's still a game to be played, because they just ran across the board and priced everything fairly. There'd be nothing left. Like, in terms of like exclusivity, it's like they could do it. It's like they don't actually have that level of aggregate demand. So who knows?
Yeah, you're not wrong, actually, right? Because I talked about, perhaps, because chat was saying hindsight is 2020. You're right. Maybe it was the wrong thing to let go of all the ADs. Well, that being said, um, there are advantages, there are levers that they could have seized upon, because they have this sort of direct to consumer relationship, where they could have perhaps set the prices a little more freely and in a more fluid fashion, perhaps, right, where they could easily raise prices on certain products while lowering it on others, based on desirability. I mean, you don't need to buy software from Palantir, I think, to figure out what's selling well and what's not particularly moving. And if any company has a cognizance of that, it has to be AP, because they do always have a very lopsided catalog for most people, right? I loved all the freaky shit they did, whether it was in the form of shapes or complications in the past, from the much despised millenary to Edouard Piguet and all these other shapes and different, ultra thin dress watches they did too. But that doesn't change the fact that most people look at AP for the Royal Oak. So we did mention that she was seen as an outsider, which probably the foundation interpreted as a potential advantage, a different kind of perspective. Whereas I think perhaps it was too obvious, right? Because you are coming from the fragrance and beauty industry, which is much more ephemeral and effervescent. And also, right, if I can push aside my own philosophical fluff, it's really a much more mass-produced and mass-marketed product, right? You can, once you have the essence, you can license it out and push out as many bottles as needed. AP can't do that same thing with their relatively niche, relatively exclusive, and quite luxurious and artisanal product. So maybe it was expected. We mentioned also that Ilaria Resta earlier this year was appointed as an independent non-executive director to the board of the Prada Group. Now we have to address the elephant in the room, which our wise viewers noted, that, hey, didn't AP announce that she was not going anywhere? We already mentioned that it is AP's 150th anniversary. I have also mentioned that before Benamias, who was in that position for about 11 years, there was Philippe Merck, who was there for 4 years, and before him, there was Georges Mailan, who was, I think, in the CEO position for 23 years. So, this is a very short time. I don't think it's a good look, whether she's making her own choice or whether they are, in fact, moving her out of this position. I'm trying to find just a very diplomatic way of saying that.
But interestingly, I'd love to see the original text, not this. What we're seeing is effectively what do you say? A paraphrasing. I don't know if this is a translation or anything like that.
Okay, let me
But
see. Let me see if I can find that.
because I haven't been able to find like literally just verbatim the official statement. Like I wouldn't even be sure that the official statement would be in English. And very curious as the specific wording that she will stay as CEO, like not just stay, because that they can do that sometimes too, where they weasel word and just say no, she's staying, maybe
Okay,
in
so
different capacity.
I have found something that's less chopped, and kind of like 2 paragraphs. It's not an official document necessarily, but I think slightly more coherent. Pardon me. These rumors are unfounded. Since assuming this role, Ilaria, by the way, the reference to her is by first name, which is kind of strange, has made a profoundly positive impact on the organization and the business, bringing renewed energy, strategic vision, and a steadfast commitment to innovation and excellence. She remains fully dedicated to leading Audemars Piguet into its next phase of growth, strengthening our culture, expanding our global presence, and driving the continued success of the brand. Now, I've already said a couple of ways where it looks bad, right? One, her immediate predecessors have all worked for at least 4 years and usually for so much longer. And again, we have already mentioned that the shortest product cycle is 3 years. So it's too short for someone to move on from this kind of job. Or perhaps it's exactly the right time, right? So someone else might pick up the baton and we can wait like 5 years after Benamias to finally see something new, whether that will be positive or negative change for AP. I've also mentioned that it's the 150th anniversary, right? You probably don't want to be firing your, new CEO 2-year-old or 2 years into the term in the middle of your 150th anniversary celebrations. The next point is the appointment of Ilaria Resta meant more than just a new CEO. AP appointed a woman as their technical director. AP appointed a woman as their North America CEO. AP appointed a woman as their CEO. So, in fact, for them, institutionally and for the industry more broadly, she's not just Ilaria. She's not just Ilaria Resta. She is a woman CEO who is stepping into the shoes of that position at the 4th biggest brand of the industry. So it's not a decision that AP can take lightly and just respond to the first set of rumors that come out of the institution and make their way into the industry and news sources by saying, yeah, we're making arrangements. She will be out of there by the end of the year. She's finding a new job, and we're looking for a new. I mean, obviously, they're not going to say that because, again, for all the promise that they have, for all the expectation that they have themselves generated around this position, that for them was not only a professional but a cultural change, a sea change, as it were. They, I think, find it very hard to admit that that this is a defeat or at least a major setback for them. At least that's my take on it, Oz. What do you think?
Yeah, I I don't see normal like not many people know the CEO of a lot of businesses. You know what I mean? Unless they're like super prominent, like Elon and so forth. The fact that I'm not exactly sure that a board would care about the optics of chopping out a CEO who
Okay.
hasn't been well established. Like they're just in a fortunate position that I don't think she's done any real harm or anything like that. There's nothing
No.
too crazy. I mean, there was the little bit of the scandal with the London event and not really inviting collectors. It was just for Instagrammers who don't even care about watches to begin with.
Right. I
But
think
but I
they
mean
do that
that's
in a
so
lot of
minor.
yeah.
And honestly, that seems on brand. Like that actually seems on brand. So I think they're in a good position that if they wanted to see her show the door, that they really shouldn't be that ashamed. They say she's held us, held us down in a trying time, and we found someone else or whatever. You know what I mean? It's not really a. I mean, I think the big issue is probably that they actually haven't found anyone else, but how this messaging got out, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, so you're essentially saying that I might be exaggerating the situation, right? Maybe in fact nothing's going on, and they wouldn't have a problem if they really wanted to let her go. They wouldn't have a problem to announce it
Yeah. So
when the
I'm sort
rumors.
of yeah. In one way, I'm saying you're right, but in another, not so much. So the
Mhm.
one way that you're right is that there might be something actually real, and they might actually be trying to rescue the situation. But in general, I don't think
Pardon me.
this should really be that big of a concern. Nobody who's buying their APs really cares whether or not Resta was good or bad retrospectively. If they just said, "Oh, okay, we're moving on," it wouldn't be like, "Oh, that was a horrifying era." Like no one's saying that.
You,
So
I don't disagree with you, right? It's the fact remains that in most industries, the CEO position can be relatively faceless and certainly not public facing. I don't think that's true for what they were trying to do in this particular case, right? And I want to give two examples of this, which will kind of take it at different levels. One, these days, and this is something new, by the way, watch boutiques were not always like this. So people who are new to collecting might find this quite normal. But the fact that now, when you step into a watch boutique, especially if it has seen a recent renovation, you will see the watchmaker's desk um, almost right dab smack in the middle of the operation, kind of an open kitchen setting where there's an actual watchmaker working there, where they would be once every so often offering classes to collectors, meaning people who have made purchases from that boutique, or actually engaging in repairs, and otherwise welcoming people, literally having also a hospitality kind of function, right? You walk into a watch boutique, it's not only sales associates who greet you, who handle you, who talk to you, but nowadays it's also the watchmakers themselves, right? So the watch industry itself created this idea that there would be even usually technical and non-public facing people that are interesting and that are vital to the way that we present ourselves. For AP, they also have, I talked about, right, how they also appointed a woman at this. I said technical director. I was wrong with the title. Her title is, this is Anne Gaëlle Quinet, and her title is Head of Complications. But for AP, Head of Complications doesn't mean someone who is holed up in the valley in Le Brassus and who dedicates all of her time to designing and conceiving new calibers and coming up with, different ways of executing classic complications and trying to invent new ones. No, it's a public facing position who actually educates both the clients, customers themselves, and people who sell the product on actually the finer points of horology, right? This was literally how she was interviewed in Hodinki earlier in 2023, right? I mean, she's a watchmaker with decades of experience in Breguet and Patek, but that's not anymore her brief. She is to face the public and educate them on the finer details of what makes AP such a great watch. Now, moving back to, thank you, Van Lux. I really do appreciate you. What is the sticker telling us? I don't know. I can't see it. There's something wrong with my, peach. Okay. I don't know how to respond to
Okay.
that.
Maybe he's saying that this lady's cute. I don't know.
Honestly, I mean, I know it's probably in this environment probably not nice to say, but hey.
Have you looked at your analytics on YouTube? Are they
You
like
know,
mine?
no, actually, I have almost 7% female viewership, which is
Okay.
insane. I
Wow.
think I don't know what I did to
Deserve
deserve
the
it.
7.
Yeah, I'm just growing my beard to keep, to ward off that sort of unwanted female attention. But joking aside, okay, what I wanted to say is now coming back to Ilaria Resta. Again, she was specifically recruited not only because they saw her such a promising candidate as an outsider, having had such a great record in the beauty industry, in the fragrance sector. They also wanted to choose a woman leader for their institution. And in fact, they wanted her to be active. So the AP, in the same way that Benamias was active, getting out there, establishing personal connections to at least the celebrity collectors. So they wanted her to continue that sort of public presence, which again Benamias did with aplomb, even if I may not have liked and appreciated his particular style. He did it really well, right? He actually was was quite adept, quite masterful actually in building those sorts of bridges between AP and their celebrity clientele. And maybe she actually fell short on that. Maybe she didn't actually come across as personable. I know they did, by the way, very consciously. I know for a fact that in every single one of their AP houses, probably beyond that as well, they had exclusive woman collector events. Right? So they were very conscious of trying to cultivate that sort of relationship between existing and aspiring woman collectors of Audemars Piguet, bringing them into AP houses. And maybe she didn't have that kind of energy. Maybe she wasn't necessarily present in the way they expected her. Maybe they didn't actually. You know what? I mean, yeah, we are saying like, the entire industry is trending that way, and it's not outrageous that AP is also suffering a decline in sales and revenue. But honestly, now that I think about it, they probably assumed, hey, just like Oz's channel and just like also Young Brando's channel, AP's customer base is 90% plus men.
Mm-hmm.
If we can bring a woman leader with and empower her with the brief of actually establishing organic relationships with woman collectors, making more female oriented and feminine presenting releases, making up 5% of decline by tapping into what is basically the 50% of the population that we have largely left unexplored. We can make up for that.
Yeah, that's plausible.
They couldn't so far. So I think that's one important takeaway. And I thank you for being here, because I could certainly not, that Hegel had something, something going on. That dialectics is good.
Yeah,
Having an
no, I
interlocutor
understand.
is
What I'm referring
fantastic.
to, everyone who didn't know, like, I think it's only was shared on my Discord actually. It was the bit that on the analytics for my channel, Google reported that the demographics were literally, and I'm not speaking figuratively, I mean literally 100% male.
Amazing.
Like there was no margin of error. It was watch channel, 100% male audience. Like that was it. I was like, wow, they're not even guessing. Like they're not even unsure that this person is a female or not. It's like just
And
100% male.
that wasn't, again, that's not something that's unique to your channel. It's usually the fate of most watch channels. So, and it's mostly mine too. Maybe on YouTube it's a little, I don't check it so obsessively, so I don't exactly know. But I don't think I've ever achieved more than 6-7% woman spectatorship, Instagram and YouTube. And honestly, in my case, it's a little, it's a little self-conscious, right? In the sense that, I on Instagram I post a lot of women's watches for a generally, masculine oriented platform, because again, it's not only that I mostly post men. I think most of what I post and my storytelling is very much about, old school masculine heroes. Whether that's intended, I don't have an ideological campaign behind it necessarily. It's just what I like. It's just who I am. But I try to step outside of that once every so often, consciously. So by talking about woman collectors, by talking about women's watches.
It
So
was funny that
it's not a surprise, actually.
in all of your US Open coverage, there was a lot of Patek and a lot of Rolex. This is the only AP I think that popped up, and she's obviously paid to wear it, but uh, it is.
Honestly, she's also the thing is she's look, in general, she's very bubbly and she's um, very enthusiastic in her public appearances, no doubt. But she doesn't talk about her whoop uh, in this same way with the same enthusiasm. Whereas she always has a new TikTok video uploaded whenever she goes to the AP boutique and AP house to pick up a new watch. So and you can see her face gleaming. Whether that's authentic or not, we can't measure it. But I can tell you that at least she can convincingly show, that she loves AP. And that also, by the way, this ties back to what we were saying about them trying to cultivate um, more women for their watches. Again, yes, they did collaborations with John Mayer and Travis Scott. And again, those are relationships that were already established by the outgoing CEO Ben Amias. But the biggest ambassador they brought into the fold in this new era of leadership is Arina Sabalenka, which is not a coincidence. And she wears all sorts of watches, that, yes, these sorts of gem set pieces, rainbow chronographs, more feminine pieces, but also just any regular cool AP as well. Royal Oak Tourbillons 2 are part of her collection, as much as the new mini Royal Oaks. So I think that's a silver lining in terms of their the 2-year term that they have had so far with Ilaria Resta. She certainly remains a bright spot. And the other AP actually happened to be on the wrist of another exceptional woman, who was Jenny Mullen, who on her own Instagram was complaining, right? I will have Jason Biggs and Guest on my tombstone. But she has the better watch. She has the more intelligent choice here. The AP Bamboo, vintage AP at that. So, you're right. We see a lot of Patek and a lot of Rolex. But the two APs that I actually chanced upon in the US Open coverage were on the wrists of women. Oh, someone says AP Corporate just sent me this. Okay, I can't expose that person, so I will try to read it in the background. All right. Again, unless you want to announce your name in the chat, I won't manage. Dear valued stakeholders, we are aware of recent rumors regarding the departure of our chief executive officer and want to state that these claims are unfounded. Yeah, this is the full text of what we were reading.
Good.
Audemars Piguet is proud to have Ilaria as its CEO. Since assuming this role, Ilaria made a profoundly positive impact on the organization and the business, bringing renewed energy, strategic vision, and steadfast commitment to innovation and excellence. She remains fully dedicated to leading Audemars Piguet into its next phase of growth, strengthening our culture, expanding our global presence, and driving the continued success of the brand. The board of directors, Audemars Piguet. So that was more or less what we had already read, was more or less the full text, but this is the full text.
Right, but I didn't hear in that a commitment to keep her as the CEO. No. Like in the other ones, it said they commit. Like it said unfounded. Like, yeah, but it was connected to her being CEO. And in the ones that I saw, like from Revolution, it implied that she's staying as CEO. This says a lot of flattering things, but it doesn't say she's going to be the CEO for the foreseeable future. It does
But
everything but say that.
yeah, I can see it. I mean, she remains committed is a phrase they used. So there's a little bit of that, but I agree. It's not a strong enough statement that yes, the rumors are unfounded, and she remains committed to staying on. Um, I'm not sure if it's a strong enough statement that she is staying. And also, we have so far considered, again, mainly the idea of the board of directors pushing her out. What if she walked into this situation and realized that the expectations were, in fact, quite unrealistic, and that there's also already so much pressure on her without even reaching her first full product cycle, and maybe she wants to move on, and they want to keep her, and there's going to be a little bit push and pull. But if she actually wants to go, what they can do to keep her, especially if she's clearly strong enough, both in terms of her connections and her CV, to have already secured a non-executive position in Prada Group's board of directors. So maybe she wants to move on, and they still want to keep her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who knows? Maybe
That
she
was
just got a huge pay cut, and they, she's looking for the door, but it's like, no one severed any ties yet.
that was OC, by the way, who shared that email
Okay.
with me.
Yeah. I'll say that yeah, it is a pretty strong statement, but it still actually does leave open the door for them to open up a CEO role to someone else, and then she stays on as like chief brand officer or something like that.
Right. Maybe she will transition into a non-executive position on the board of directors of the Fondation,
Yeah.
their foundation. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of room, like without them actually saying like she's going to be CEO for Cerebral, but that may be more of a commitment than the board would ever want to give any CEO. You know what I mean? It depends. For a public company, it would suck to like be openly like iffy about your CEO. But for a private company, I would have said that it's acceptable for the board to keep them on their toes.
And it is, by the way, it's commonplace to say this about Rolex, but the governance structure of AP is actually not that different from Rolex. It is, well, it's a little bit different because it is primarily guided by a family owned foundation that appoints a CEO, whereas Rolex operates as a nonprofit organization led by a foundation that's not really controlled by any particular interest group, and certainly much less a family. So it is in fact a private company, not publicly traded. So it's not really accountable to shareholders. It doesn't have to be really all that transparent with their dealings. In that way, it's not that much different from Rolex.
Mm-hmm.
Captain Kirk has a good point here. Coaches are hired and fired on the games they win, not how good they are. And I think he says good here in relation to character. Being good at motivation doesn't hurt. However, Benamias comes across as an incredible motivator to me. Yeah, I agree. But
Yeah.
that's the thing. I think coaches, that's a great analogy actually, because um, you know, I don't want to soccer geek out on people here, but the great example of this is the current um, Germany national football team coach, Julian Nagelsmann, who's a very young guy, by the way, kind of a prodigy for coaching standards in soccer. I think he's still 38 years old, certainly not even 40 yet. And that's extremely young to be the coach of a national team, much less the German national team. He constantly says, I think 75% or 80% of coaching today is communication. And that communication doesn't only happen in the dressing room, at the facilities, with the players and with other members of the staff, but also with the general public. And honestly, we have not. That's the thing. We have not seen enough of Ilaria Resta in these 2 years to judge her as a public. And I only have one AP. Yes, I didn't buy it at retail, but I'm very emotionally invested in that brand. And if I don't know much about Ilaria Resta after almost 2 years, certainly more than 2 years after her official appointment, although she started officially at the beginning of 2024, maybe she hasn't been that great of a communicator so far. She hasn't been around in public. I cannot speak, even if I had rumors from inside, I cannot speak of how she's able to relate to and motivate and bring together her own team at Le Brassus. I don't know how she relates to other directors and watchmakers, etc. I have no clue about that, and I wouldn't speak to that anyways. But as a collector who likes AP and who reads about AP obsessively, both from a historical standpoint and from the current situation, I don't know anything about her. Whereas I knew enough about Benamias to not like him as a person. But you see, he did a much better job stepping out into the public, giving obnoxious interviews, trying to stay at the same standing with Hollywood superstars, wearing strange kinds of clothing for what I was used to see from a Swiss CEO. But he did his thing. That's the thing. Like, he made himself available. He made himself known. He made himself present. And she was just not around in the same way.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of what puts us off about him is that he looks like he's trying his best to use the position of CEO to ingratiate himself with celebrities, but that is kind of his job, and so he did his best to make himself look as comfortable as possible around them, and it was a little cringy, but it's like that is the business ultimately.
Yeah,
I mean, if he's coming in looking like Thierry Stern in a suit, that doesn't look that cool. You know what I mean? It doesn't seem like a brand you want to be a part of per se.
It's again, I completely agree with you, right? Obviously it looked for the most part like Francois, right? By the way, yes, it does sound strange when they just mention Ilaria, but they were also talking about Francois rather than Monsieur Benamias or something. So I don't think it's a sexist thing. It's just like they're trying to be cool, right? We'll talk about our CEO on a first name basis because that's the kind of image they are trying to project, and that's why Benamias was a great fit actually, because he was also trying to be a little bit too familiar and too personable. And I don't disagree, right? I think there was a self-serving, always a self-serving undercurrent to that. Even the way he cultivated his personal relationship with Arnold Schwarzenegger, in the early 2000s, but he did well for the brand, right? He did actually accomplish a lot for Audemars Piguet through those personal relationships. So at the end of the day, you can't blame him for that. I mean, I can't blame him. That I don't want to put words into your mouth. So, Yeah, obviously, yes, he was a little bit self-serving, right? It did look like a lot of times that he was trying to personally ingratiate himself with a lot of those celebrities that he was around uh, for the brand. But he did, in major part, use those relationships then to benefit the brand. And no one can tell me at any rate that these kinds of leadership positions don't attract these kinds of characters, right? If you are not, I mean, look, you can't make it to that level if you are not a little bit self-serving and a little bit self-interested, a little bit narcissistic even, right? I don't think you can make a CEO in any cutthroat industry if you don't have those character traits. So, that's like blaming a touring musician for drinking alcohol. To say like, oh,
Mhm.
Benamias was a little, self-interested and self-serving. No shit, he's a CEO.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I mean, it's just I guess not to our taste, but they're trying to run an entire brand and not just for us.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, I freely admit that he had a he had a proven track record, and by all accounts, by all metrics, he did exceptionally well in the 11 years that he was a CEO. Do you still have the interest and the energy about to talk about the meeting that did or did not happen between Trump and Dufour, the
Yeah,
Rolex
sure,
CEO?
absolutely.
Okay, let's.
So I didn't see this, so I was double checking see if you posted anything about it. I hadn't seen
I
it.
did not, but the picture is there. I'm gonna pull it directly from. Let me see if I can find it. Yep. Um, so, as you guys know, um, it just ended this weekend, but U.S. Open, which is of course one of the grand slams of the tour for professional tennis, just took place over the last 2 weeks. And Rolex, beyond its extensive relationships in the sport, um, having a number of athletes, both men and women, as their uh, testimonies, was also the main sponsor of the event. Uh, One of the main sponsors, let's put it that way, because so is Ralph Lauren, and they have a similar relationship, by the way, both Ralph Lauren and Rolex, with Wimbledon as well, for example. Um, so Donald Trump's presence, for the most part, was talked about as, in terms of how it was a security issue. Why does he have to do this? Why was he even present? People booed him. People don't like him, so on and so forth, right? It was completely pulled into the orbit of this bipartisan antagonism that we have in America. Coke or Pepsi, Republican or Democrat, who the fuck cares? I'm not interested in that. I'm here to talk about watches anyway. So the idea was, and you see it in this picture, and I'm not sure if the Vanity Fair, okay, it does recognize it. It says Donald Trump and Rolex CEO Jean-Frédéric Dufour, greets the fans from the Rolex suite. So Trump was actually there, yes, because he's the U.S. president and he does want to make a public showing in these kinds of events. Famously, he was on the platform, when Chelsea was presented with the Club World Cup trophy earlier in the summer. But I think Rolex actually invited him. And why Um, why could that be? Oz, what do you think?
I mean, the tariffs. I mean, they need to get something done, and honestly, I don't think the Swiss have a very funny government setup. So they don't have.
Don't just say it like that and leave it there. What do you mean?
No, I mean it's more like the United States in that the power is with the cantons, and it's more like a council than there is like a single head of state or president. And
Right.
I might be
Absolutely.
misstating that how dispersed the power is um in Switzerland.
No, I think you're right. And it might be, in fact, the reason I pushed you to say that is because you have lived in that country. So
Yeah,
you know these things actually. And yes, I think it shouldn't be actually so difficult to understand for an American, in the sense that I think the power is very decentralized and maybe, in fact, even more dispersed than the US.
yeah,
Um, we have also in this channel talked about how powerful Rolex is in Geneva specifically, right? And I know sometimes this gets really exaggerated, right? There are people who compare Rolex to the Vatican, and not only to the Vatican as the church, but also in the most conspiratorial, conspiracy theory oriented understanding of the Vatican. So I'm not one of those people. I don't want to overestimate Rolex's power, but in that sort of decentralized system where Rolex is so powerful in the canton of Geneva in general and is such an important player for Swiss exports more broadly, and not just in the watches. And in the watches, they are uncontroversially, incontrovertibly the leader by a large margin. It's not outrageous to suggest that this was part of a horological and sports tennis diplomacy effort for them to have an audience
hmm
with Trump and gain Trump's favor in some way as they're trying to move on to the negotiating table. Because I think
yeah, and we'll soon see a Tiffany colored Daytona on the president's wrist sometime soon.
that would be fucking amazing, by the way.
That'd be outrageous.
That would be fucking amazing. Uh,
I mean, it's not any more outrageous than Steve will do it, giving him the platinum
dude,
dating.
I think. Did you see Kushner was wearing a Moser? Did you see that?
Oh, really? That's
Yeah,
interesting. It's a tasteful watch. I mean, it's
it
not
is extremely tasteful. I
very
mean, like,
tasteful watch.
he got my respect for that. But what I'm saying is, like, it's after I've seen that, to
hmm
see a Daytona on Trump's wrist, like, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I think the tariffs have been in effect since August 9, I want to say, or was it August 7? Um,
hmm
at any rate, people were really expecting, like, that was just a negotiating tactic. People will come to the table right away, and it will be solved almost
Yeah.
immediately. Well, it hasn't been, right? It's been only almost a month by now, um, and they're not going anywhere until a real settlement happens, and in this case between Switzerland and US in a one-to-one, or in a more direct way,
Yeah.
at least. So I think the Swiss industry, one, realizes that the tariffs are not going anywhere on their
So,
own by themselves, and they're also realizing that they can't, quote unquote, solve this problem just by reflecting it on their prices, where
yeah.
they're already facing significantly declining sales and revenue.
Yeah, declining sales and revenue, increased costs when you come to their precious metals, like gold. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back to like, how does power work in Switzerland?
Mhm.
And it like a lot of America was founded on some of the ideas of the Swiss. And if you look at some of the ideas around the Second Amendment, they're also coming directly from inspiration from the Swiss as well. But I wasn't talking out of my ass with respect to their head of state doesn't really have any power. So the top level of power in Switzerland is a council of 7 members elected by parliament, and they collectively are the head of state. There is one of the councillors that's rotated every year that is called the president, but they have no extra powers over anyone else in the council. So like they refer to it as being first among equals. So it is not unusual, I would say, to expect that head of Rolex is speaking on behalf of tariffs of the president. That's not, if you understand the backing, this is not necessarily just the purvey of like is Trump sitting down with a council of 7 people who don't have that much power even collectively. It's not even that, it's not that simple basically. And that's for a good purpose. It's like how Americans, we complain that Congress doesn't really work. It was designed not to work. Like we don't actually want a fast moving and shaking Congress changing laws every single year and rapidly changing society constantly. This is not the role that the founding fathers had set up. It's not meant to move fast.
Well, you're right. I mean, it's there's a reason that the executive presidency exists. And again, that's why they wanted to perhaps engineer this sort of soft diplomatic effort to reach the guy, the person that you would need to talk to actually get to the bottom of this. I'm trying to also, since I said, because I didn't actually do a full post on this, but I don't care at this point. So I wanted to share. This is, I don't know how clear it is, but this is Jared Kushner's wrist. And this is specifically the tantalum Mose perpetual calendar with that unique enamel dial. It's that watch. Jared Kushner, President Trump. And there's the Tiffany made trophy.
I'm disappointed I'm not seeing kids around. I did like that about the early part of the presidency. There were kids everywhere all the time, and I think it was good.
You mean Trump's children, or just the
grandkids,
the smaller kids?
Younger kids? Yeah, the smaller kids, just normalizing kids. I thought it was a really good example to set.
Well, I mean, I think that's something actually that was very consciously started by the Kennedys, and JFK Jr., John, as they said, people were obsessed with him, and since then, I think it's become part of the American presidency, even though it has later disappeared. And I mean, in the previous term, again, I don't want to necessarily go into it. I don't think it was that surprising, right? Let's just say we had a very old president. I think that's a fair point to make. But I think also in the social media era, people become very protective of their kids, even at that level where they know it's part of a public diplomacy effort almost to depict that sort of family life. So perhaps that's also what Trump realized as well, because I mean, even with Barron, who has already become a young man, the level of vile forms of cyberbullying that happens is wild. So imagine a small child facing a fraction of that. I'm not sure if kids are made to take that sort of punishment just because they belong to the Trump family. So I I agree with you that I would have loved to see that sort of family in the White House, but it's also, I don't blame them for trying to protect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was part of a soft diplomatic effort, so to speak, when
Yeah.
it comes to Trump's presence at the U.S. Open.
And his imminent allocation of a Daytona. That would be, it would be so outrageous. I
Okay,
mean,
well,
we already have one of the cabinet prominently wearing a Daytona every day.
yes. Well, I mean, this is inevitable. We have to do this. Um, so, what would be the Daytona for Trump? Let's configure Rolex Daytona
Yeah.
for Donald Trump.
I think
Does it have to be? It can't be platinum. That's too subtle.
it's
That's
gonna
too
be
subtle.
gold.
It
Yeah.
has to be yellow gold, in
It
fact,
has to be
right?
yellow gold. And there aren't that many options in yellow gold at the moment. Well, I mean, there never was like crazy amounts of options, but
Would he go for matching bezel, black ceramic, or diamond set?
I think it'll be gold. Like I don't see Trump as a diamonds person. I think he gets the one that I've got. I've got it lying around, by the way. I don't know if I should
By
get it.
by the way, I mean, is it even fair that we're just configuring something? You think he wouldn't want something off catalog? The gem set is not for him. That's
I
what.
I don't think Trump like cares that much. You know what I mean? Like he won't even have any concept of like, oh, this one's harder to get or blah blah blah. Do
No,
you get
no,
what I mean?
no.
Like,
He's not a like he's not a nerd
yeah,
like
exactly.
us here.
So he's just gonna get one that he likes. We assume that he'd go the Daytona, but it
Yeah,
probably
no,
would
no.
just
So
be
we
another
chose the
Daytona.
Daytona for
Well,
him
we
already.
chose the
We chose we
Daytona.
chose the matching bezel. We chose, I guess, the full oyster bracelet, not an oyster flex. I don't think Trump is an oyster
Yeah.
flex guy.
No, it's he's not an
He would
oyster
rather
flex guy.
flex the whole gold
Yeah.
watch, I think, rather than going for oyster
Let,
flex.
let, let me go get this watch. Let me go get it. I'll be right back.
The Trump signature model. Bring it out.
I'll just be like 30 seconds. It's in the other room.
No, no, take your time. By the way, guys, if you have any questions, if you want to show your support, I think there's been a lot of gems. This has been a great conversation, and I thank Aussie Expat for it. Please don't hesitate to show your support or ask further questions with super chats. Hit the like button if you haven't already. If you followed me from Instagram, please subscribe here. We have this sort of content on a regular basis, at least 4 times a week. And obviously, the aim is, with your support, to increase the quality and quantity of content on the YouTube platform as well. And you know what I can achieve once I get that sort of dedication from Instagram, if you are coming from Instagram. So I just wanted to say that. And when it comes to, by the way, when it comes to other ways of supporting the channel, I outline them in the video description as well.
So I just think it has to be the one with the most gold. It's really that simple.
And
It's also my choice. The one with the
what a,
most
what a
gold.
surprise! And you were calling Benamias narcissist.
There's a time and place. There's a time and place. I don't know. I love this dial so much. And
Can't
there's just
blame you.
something about the
Can't blame you.
consistency of it. It's just so nice. That being said, so this is the first time I've worn it quite a while, and I've been
Mhm.
wearing the yellow gold one for a few days now. And I love this 11 series steel. It's just so much smaller and lighter in both feel and dimensions.
Because
It's just so
your
much more
gold Daytona
wearable.
is from the new series, right? From the 12 series.
Yeah, yeah. And even in the 11, the yellow gold full bracelet was sort of very similar to this. So
Obviously.
yeah, there's a big difference between the 11 series steel and everything else. And I think people are sort of sleeping on the fact that the 11 series steel is very special. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it,
you're right. And you have been, by the way, overall in general, and not only in terms of the Daytona, staunch defender of the previous series
yes.
in every way, basically. So you are remaining pretty consistent on messaging there.
Yeah.
Um, by the way, I will say this. Yes, we said it's an arbitrary choice. There's not even the conversation that Trump will wear a Rolex watch and that he's waiting on a Daytona allocation. This is all in good fun. This is in jest. Yet, if we were to take it seriously, I don't think it's an actually arbitrary choice because, yes, the day date has been, at least since Lyndon Johnson, almost inextricably linked to uh, the president, the US president. The bracelet of the watch itself had that name president even before LBJ wore one. So obviously, I understand that people would go, how minds would go immediately to the day date. But again, something that we talked about in this channel, and this was, at least despite my own predilections, is how Rolex's catalog internally has um, shifted in terms of yes, customer preference, and the premium and prestige the collector's place on certain models over others. But also, this is something that Rolex started leaning on as well, right? It is not a coincidence that the first two books that they're publishing are on the Submariner and on the Datejust, which were their um, these are the official books written by Nick Fawkes, like the Submariner book we both have, the Datejust book that was just announced. I don't think it's a coincidence that those are the two models that are addressed first in that historical fashion. But it's also undeniable that from the Submariners, Datejusts, and Day Dates of old, Daytona has become the new flagship and the most desirable model of the brand in the last 2 decades, maybe more. And the GMT Master, certainly, if not necessarily in numbers and sales, in terms of aspirational quality and in terms of desirability, has also overtaken the Submariner. So, for the highest
Mhm.
level of power, no matter how we imagine it, to reach for a Daytona rather than a day date or a Submariner can make sense.
Yeah. You mentioned one, we have an important commentator, Morty's Diner, in there, also giving the rubber stamp approval on our choice of
I
Trump's
can,
watch.
well, not just our choice, right? I think now you are backtracking a little bit.
Uh-huh.
He's giving official approval to Aussie Expats Gold Daytona. Like,
Uh-huh.
it's not just our choice; it's your Daytona that gets a stamp of approval here.
I also linked the current Amazon listing for the Submariner book,
Hmm.
which I paid full price for direct from Wallpaper in England. I think I paid a lot of money. It's now available for $37.70
But
delivered.
tell me at least you also got the, not that it matters, but at least this can be your cope as it is mine.
Mhm.
The silk
Yes.
what was it? The
The
silk
silk cover, I
silk
don't know.
cover.
I barely don't. I don't. I'm not even sure I understand what the
It's
difference is. I
it,
think the
it
ones in
feels
the
it
ADs
feels
are
it
silk
feels
because they look the
yeah,
same as mine.
it feels nice. It's nice to touch. It's like the Archie luxury experience. You can smell it, you can feel
I
it.
oh, so are we saying
It's
that
luxury.
this one it'll be like a glossy hardcover? Is
Yeah,
that the expectation?
yeah.
Okay.
I think that's and that's okay. And they don't have, by the way, even that because wallpaper. Let me see if
Maybe they still have it direct because the ADs have recently gotten theirs. Like I noticed like maybe 3, maybe 6 months ago, I saw the Submariner book laying around in the store.
Mhm.
And yeah,
There's
I
not even a similar option, by the way, with the Datejust book. There's a French
interesting.
edition. There's a um,
The Datejust book has to be like quadruple the size of the Submariner book, right?
but by the way, I mean, some things just sound better in French, I guess. It says une montre qui fait date, which literally means like, a watch that makes history. But
Mhm.
of course, they
Lift your
just
date.
and that that fits a little better, which is strange, because Nick
Do
Falk.
I
Yeah,
do I
sorry.
have to
Go ahead.
buy this book to get the Submariner book?
What do you mean? You have the Submariner book.
No, I mean like if we were advising someone on a first purchase, like they get the Datejust book and then they can get the Submariner book.
By the way, just with any other officially authorized book, Patek used to give to their prestige clients the authorized biography, which was coincidentally also written by Nick Falks.
Hmm.
I've seen people, and very recently on your Discord as well, being gifted the Submariner book by their
An AD, yeah.
retailer. Yeah, by
Yeah,
their.
that's I guess it's not completely beyond the pale. Like I mean it's a very generous book, very generous gift. I
And this
don't.
is this is roughly what we paid, I think, when we
Mhm.
initially pre-ordered, £100.
Yeah, in that range, like 150 US, 170 US is what I feel like
Yeah,
it was. It was
yeah,
it was an expensive book, and
yeah.
I haven't completely read it. That's
No,
uh,
absolutely, absolutely.
I'm shocked that it's a modest size. I mean, as as best as I can tell, like there should be like there isn't even a page per reference. You know what I mean? Like this is
Yeah,
just
the
how many
variations
date just
certainly.
dials over time, and I can't imagine this is.
I feel both surprised and also kind of redeemed by the fact that they chose something in two tone.
Mhm.
Um, because again, my date just is all stainless steel with a white gold bezel, but the first Rolex that I bought with my own money was a two-tone GMT master, and at that time, uh, people were shitting all over it, and I had to live with that for at least a decade before it became even acceptable. And for it to now officially represent the model and one of the iconic models of Rolex, the Datejust.
It'll take another half century before the two tone Datejust isn't the iconic model of Datejust.
Yeah,
It'd take a very long time, very very long time. Champagne dial and all.
yeah. It's eerily similar to what Rolex rejected to when it well when Rolex rejected to appear on American Psycho's wrist, right?
Hmm.
This looks eerily like a Patrick Bateman
Hmm.
Rolex Datejust, although this is like a luminous.
Is this a current gen? I guess it is. It had the Swiss, the crown between Swiss and made.
I think so. Let's see if we can configure something like this from the. It looks current enough to my eyes, but then again, the variations are so many with every model really at this
Well, I
point.
mean,
They
they haven't moved into another generation because the
Oh, yeah, there
32,
we go.
yeah, 32 movement, so 33 movement will have two crowns. Like the Sky Dweller, if we'd moved on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I can't say I've seen someone wear a modern reference, but the number of Rolexes I see in the wild isn't that high to begin with. But I heard some really funny things about from some AMAs saying that the majority of what's delivered is no longer the date just,
Oh yeah.
and
And what is it?
all the sport like so weight of sports models versus date justs, that there are more sports models being delivered than date justs, and I find that unfathomable.
Hmm.
But what can I say? I mean, it's probably true. I don't know. I mean, it's probably true. I mean, just in terms of demand, it's very hard to just shovel out literally hundreds of date justs. I don't know. I don't know. So they were saying, basically saying the Submariner is very, very common. Like the bulk of the sports model
Yeah.
deliveries are Submariners. So,
And it is actually, again, for I think maybe we have been able to dislodge that belief within the sphere of actual collectors. But whenever someone randomly figures out that I'm quote unquote a watch guy, and I am the resident watch guy at the cigar lounge, so that doesn't take too long for people to figure out.
mhm.
They always ask, so is Rolex so hard to get? But honestly, it's not that hard to get actually. If you just want a Submariner, date or no date, and if you're willing to wait a couple of months, I think most ADs will be able to get you one.
Yeah, I think as long as you're not a complete ass,
Yeah,
um, it's
yeah.
it's 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 doable. But some people just, they're unlikable. I don't I don't know what to say. My I introduced my friend like I've got a new friend here in Vegas, and they're interested. They already have a Submariner, but they're interested in getting some new stuff.
Hmm.
And I sat down with lunch with him. What do you like? What do you want? Let's go and just have a look at some pieces and stuff like that. See what you like, because that's the most important thing, like getting what you like. And I take him to the Bucaro, and then he like immediately walks over to the Tudor boutique, and he's like ignoring the SA, and he's just sort of like rifling through the Tudor catalog, and he's going backwards and forwards. I'm just like, why don't you just literally look at watches? And he goes, "Have you got the flamingo blue?" And I'm just like, I just she now has to de-escalate the situation, and calmly tell him like we basically don't get any of those, and if we did, there's a lot of people who ask for it, blah 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 blah. But over lunch I told him explicitly, the Tudor flamingo blue and pink, these are like kryptonite at the moment. Like SAs freak out if you have them. Everyone asks for them. That like it's just impossible. Like don't even like do it. The first thing you ask it, do you have the flamingo? It's just
But that's the funny thing. I know, it was good material for Archie's routines when
Mhm.
when you first entered the orbit, so to speak, and you were talking about, how you relate to the sales associates as actual human beings,
Right.
bring something sweet, be nice. Um, you know people made jokes about that, but
Mhm.
the gist of that, whatever your favorite pastry is, whether you want to bring pastries into your authorized dealer or to a watch retailer at all, um, and really those are the kinds of those are the only gifts that at this point, especially with rampant corruption that was exposed in so many different watch stores, the kinds of gifts you can bring are stuff that can be directly consumed, on location, something that can be shared with everyone and not specific to just one sales associate, flowers, those kinds of things. So it's really, that is also helpful. But whether you bring something or not, the actual idea is, hey, once every so often you drop by and you just engage people in conversation, right?
Yeah.
Without necessarily in every meeting pushing for a particular kind of piece. Just
Right.
remind them that you are there. Just let them know when it's the occasion that you're interested in this, that, and the other thing, and certainly not X, Y, and Z. And sooner or later, they will offer you something, and if you don't like it, you can move on and try to cultivate a real relationship with someone else. I mean, it's not just really, of course, having a strong account and a larger spending history helps you to get better pieces as time goes on. But it's really not like any other human relationship. It's really not about throwing your weight around and throwing money at that relationship that gets you the best watches.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just as complicated as any normal relationship, any human relationship. It's ultimately the only reason they're going to pick you for a piece that everyone is asking for is they genuinely would actually like you to have it. Like they want to see you happy, and that only happens
That's it.
from a genuine connection, and actually getting to know it, not just when are you going to get it, blah 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 blah, like the hard press. It's not. They're not going to be guilt tripped into giving you the watch.
I mean, no one, and also, I know it's sometimes really hard because I have in luxury retail in general, and this is not only specific to watches, and especially having shopped and just browsed in Rodeo Drive specifically, I've dealt with genuine nightmares of sales associates, right? So I know how unpleasant they can be. But even then, even when I have a personal beef, literally with someone, I think I'm human enough to step back and at least, like, beyond that personal confrontation, beyond my personal experience, reflect on what produces that sort of interaction. And a lot of times, it's not an easy job, right? There's a lot of attrition, and when luxury sales are booming, it might be that a few very successful sales associates. It's not so different from the kinds of tips that attractive waiters and waitresses make. So those sales associates may be making a lot of money for the most part. Most of them actually are not making all that much money, and they have to deal with a lot of insufferable customers, 9 to 5 on a very regular basis. So, you have to have some empathy when you're entering that relationship. I'm not saying, like, that allow that to become abusive, simply because, oh, their job is so, no, their job is
Yeah.
not that hard, right? I'm not trying to say that. That being said, it is a difficult job. They deal with a lot of difficult people. So if you can be within the sea of that difficult, impossible to satisfy, and at times obnoxious, and simply unkind sea of clients, you can make a difference just by
Yeah.
being a normal person who is talking to another normal person.
Yeah, 100%. Like I'm not often talking about watches with my SA. Like it's simple. I hope that I give them justification that the time spent with me as a client is a little break in their day, that we're having a little bit of fun. Hey, do you like going in somewhere and visiting a friend and having a little chat and catching up? That's what I'm doing. I'm just catching up with a friend, and you know, and they have the cover. You know, I'm a good client as well, and
Yeah.
they have the cover to have a little bit of a breather, and not being on the spot for a hard sell or a customer that's pushing hard or so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm not saying these are tricks. I mean, unless you think making a friend is a trick, uh, that's
They,
that's
I mean, it's making friends and influencing people. No,
yeah,
that's like a very famous book.
yeah, and
There are people who turn, yes, there are people who turn basic human relationships into tricks. Of course,
yeah. Well, I mean, that book is actually quite good. I don't know if you've ever read it.
the
It's not.
Dale Carnegie book, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It's a great book. I When I originally looked at title and premise, I thought it was like, oh, this is sort of scumbag worthy behavior. But no,
No, no,
it's genuine. It's sort of like,
no.
this is how you be a
Unless,
better person for other people.
look, I mean, unless you think, unless you're bound to think of any systematic approach to human relationships is at its basis manipulation, unless that's how your mind works,
Hmm.
I don't think there is. I don't think that's what's cultivated. That's what's conceived. That's
Yeah,
what's taught by that book. So
yeah.
unless you think that any idea of systematically approaching um,
A
that
relationship.
is, yeah,
And look, to go like to jump all the way to the other end of the spectrum, and that is, you know, your wife or or your husband. Sustaining a marriage relationship is work. There are
yeah,
entire books on the subject. There are regular meetings you might have, date nights set up that are like militaristically planned because you that's the only way that it will happen because
couples
you're
therapy.
just so busy. There's couples therapy. There's a lot of explicit interventions and effort that is made to maintain a marriage.
Hmm.
Never mind just, like, you shouldn't beat yourself up if you need a little bit of more conscious thought to be able to establish a relationship with someone that you're only meeting for like 15 minutes at a time, maybe once a month. You know what I mean? To put your best foot forward
Yeah,
and to enjoy each other's company because you're both not being shitheads, basically.
that's a great way to put it. Any other lingering thoughts before, since we're approaching midnight in our parts of the world already? I think
Yeah.
it's fair to
Um,
think of
not many
ways to
big
see.
thoughts on the watch world, but I did hand in my notice today, so I'm going
Yeah.
to be a man of permanent leisure soon enough.
Do
Uh,
you do you know that I don't are you that kind of gamer? Do you know leisure
Leisure Suit Larry, yeah.
yes, yes.
Back in the day, you could pork everything, if I remember. There's always a
It's
response. Got pork the doorknob.
I know, like, it's not um yeah, I'm not ingratiating myself with my 6% female audience, but that was one of my favorite computer games when I was growing up.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I had a little bit of time with Leisure
Amazing.
Suit Larry, but yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to spending a bit more time outside. Like whenever the weather gets good here, and it's not always great weather in Vegas. It can be too hot, it can be too cold, but when it's a great day, I always felt like I needed to be outside. I need to go. I
It's
want
cold
to.
when the sun goes down
It
in the
can, but
desert, no?
straight up in winter, like the highs will only be in the 50s. So it will genuinely be cold. And in summer it's like genuinely hot. So you got to make use of spring and fall to be able to get out there. And I didn't want to spend any more time inside, basically, when the weather's starting to get really good.
That's great news, man. It's congratulations. And I know, like, in the past, maybe you kind of loosely thought about relocating, but I'm glad you're staying in Las Vegas. Are you by any chance making it to my event next week?
I
Did you give any
I'll
thought about
reconsider.
that?
I'll reconsider. I originally I was like, it's not going to happen.
And I still
But
understand if it doesn't happen, guys. This is I'm organizing my first exclusive event with a watch boutique here, and a very special brand at that. I've already sent out my invitations to people like Ozzy and others that I know directly among the collector community. The exact invitation, and there have been a few members, of this audience who reached out to me, and the best way of reaching to me is on Instagram, sending me a direct message. Follow me on Instagram and send me a direct message, and I will send you an invitation for the event. It's going to be next week on Thursday, so September 18th at 5. And I will give you all the details once you contact me. And again, space is limited. I already have a number of people who are coming, including hopefully Ozzy. But there's also still, a handful of seats to go around. And it will be mostly just talking watches and enjoying some cocktails. So it's not nothing too outrageous, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
yeah, we'll see. The only complication, I'll probably have to rent a car or fly in. I'm not sure. Following night, I have a comedy show to go to, but shouldn't be too big of a problem. So we'll see. We'll see.
All right, I remain hopeful in that case.
Yeah, I've got. I'm working for one more month, but they're not going to assign me anything.
I mean, you have already handed in your notice, so
yeah, they're not going to hand anything over to me that's actually critical. So we'll see.
That's great news. I know you have been planning it out, you have been thinking about it, but it's good
Yeah,
that you have.
walking. I've been planning it for a long time, and by a long time, like my whole life. I'd always been planning by this age to not be able to work because of certain health conditions. I was hereditary health conditions that I came to discover like were not going to be an issue for me. So yeah, I'm happy. I'll enjoy a good middle life.
Good, very nice to hear that. I've done something similar, and I hope it works much better for you than it has worked for me so far. And I know that you are just generally a better planner than me, so I'm sure it will be working better.
Yeah, I hope so.
All right, everybody. This has been great. Thank you so much, Oz. I wasn't. You guys know a lot of what I do here. I plan on my end, but because in general I'm kind of in my own world doing all sorts of things at once. We don't necessarily coordinate when there are guests, so it's really a pleasure for me when I open something like this and see Ozzy already in the background. So it was a surprise to me, but I couldn't have found a better interlocutor. I always appreciate your company, Oz. And I think
Likewise.
we made some good content in these 2 hours when we talked about the tariffs, the Donald Trump Daytona, and we began, and that was the meat of our discussion. That was our most substantive discussion, where we tried to think about the potential CEO transition at Audemars Piguet. So if you want to check that out, rewind right back. After the live stream ends, please feel free to write a comment, whether it's your perspective or you want to ask a question. I'm more than happy to read it. Follow me on Instagram. Oz has his own YouTube platforms, but specifically at Aussie Expat Watches. You spell it exactly the same, but I'm sure you can drop a direct link into the chat. So let's do that. But at Aussie Expat Watches. And beyond that, I look forward to seeing you all on the next one. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, wear and enjoy your watches. Bye.